Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions and an American Catechism, coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on Friday, August 15th, 2025, where it is currently 97 degrees. On this channel, I discuss a variety of things related to American history, politics, religion, culture, current events, and whiskey. Today's episode features one of the classic films that make up the American film corpus, the Maltese Falcon. This film was one of the first 25 films included in the National Film Registry established by Congress in 1988 for its value to our culture and its contribution to the history of film. Because Johnny Walker Scotch is mentioned in the book from Dashiell Hammett on chapter 11, page 481 in my volume, The Fat Man is the name of the title, I'll be sipping a glass of Johnny Walker Scotch throughout this review. Cheers. Just the facts. Directed and written by John Huston, produced by Warner Brothers in 1941. 101 minutes long, with a budget of $375,000. Its box office take was $1.8 million. Starring Humphrey Bogart, Mary Astor, Gladys George, Peter Lorre, Sidney Greenstreet, considered to be the first big American film noir movie. Based on the 1930 novel by Dashiell Hammett. This is an anthology of several of his novels. This 1941 movie was a remake of a 1931 movie. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. This set that I got here, a 3-disc special edition, has got the original 1931 edition. It's got a 1936 comedy version, which I've not seen, and then it's got the 1941 edition here. So I've seen the 1931 and the 41, and it's good to see both of them together. The plot. This is a hard-boiled detective story that centers around the search for a jewel-encrusted gold falcon that dates back to the medieval days, but ends up being a murder mystery and a pack full of lies, deceptions, and double crossings. Why should you watch this movie? Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That was my pastor's sermon text this last Sunday morning. And coming right after I had watched this movie, the theme of the movie was solidified in my mind. In this story, we have lies, deceit, double-crossing, murder, greed, lust, all wrapped up in the dingus, as Sam Spade calls it, this Maltese Falcon. In the end, the black bird, a bird of prey, turns out to be a fake, yet it preyed on the criminals. They had given their lives for what ended up being vanity. Today's movies are all largely about action, sex, nudity, special effects, CGI, instead of real acting and real storytelling. The Maltese Falcon is a great example of plot and character development that relies primarily on the acting skills of those involved, a lot of dialogue to tell a good story well, and excellent camera and lighting techniques that set the tone and the atmosphere of the movie, communicating an important message. This movie is a great example of the attitude shift in America, a philosophy that emerged in the 1930s as a result of World War I, Prohibition, and all the gangster activities of that day, followed by the Great Depression. The men were hard, tough, kept their emotions in check. Here is one of the greatest portrayals of tough guy cinema in American film history. This is not only a great piece of American film history, but it sets a standard for acting that is with us still. Movies from 80 years ago require much more out of you, more thought, closer listening skills, paying attention to detail, and therefore, they're more rewarding. My score for this movie is a 92. Letter grade for enjoyability and importance, A+. Now for the details. Historical accuracy. Most of the movies I do for this channel are historically based in some fashion. This one, straight up fiction. So how do I evaluate its historical accuracy? First, I look at the movie after reading the novel by Hammett, and I find the movie to be extremely close to the novel, which is great. I love it when movies adhere closely to the original story. Second, does the movie adequately portray the times that produced the novel and the movie? In this case, absolutely. After World War I and the Roaring Twenties with Prohibition and all the shenanigans that went along with that, then you had the Great Depression. And there was this cold cynicism and grittiness that settled into European and American culture. The Yankee optimism that we were famous for and faith of a religious nation had been challenged and came up short. So the crime novels, the hard-boiled detectives, were created. Serial magazines were created to tell lurid, sexy crime stories. The 1920s included a sexual revolution along with the Jazz Age, the advent of the automobile, the flapper girls, and Prohibition. This created an age of gangsters and bootleggers who flagrantly eschewed the laws and law enforcement. The shootouts were epic. This produced a widespread cynicism and toughness in our culture. In film noir and true crime stories, there is always the femme fatale, a woman who is murderous, deceitful, and deeply flawed. There are heavy sexual allusions that represent the increase in sexuality and promiscuity in our culture at the time. This movie, widely considered the founding movie of American film noir, is true to the times. Hammett had worked as a Pinkerton detective in Baltimore and San Francisco in his early days, and his birth name was Samuel, hence Sam Spade, a detective in San Francisco. So for historical accuracy, 18 of 20 points. Movie production and background. The novel by Hammett was serialized in 5 parts in 1929 to 1930 in the Black Mask magazine, famous for its true crime stories. Then, in 1930, Alfred A. Knopf published it in book form. Warner Brothers bought the rights to the book in 1930 for $8,500 and made it the movie in 1931, which stuck very close to the book, including pointing out some of the homosexuality of Cairo, and it showed the strip search scene by Spade of O'Shaughnessy. This was pre-code Hollywood. The sexuality throughout the 1931 movie is a lot more overt than in the 1941 movie. The motion picture production code began enforcement in 1934 and 36, so the remake in 41 really had to tone down the sexuality, nudity, and drinking of alcohol. In the book, alcohol brands are listed. I told you about Johnny Walker. Later on, Bacardi rum is mentioned in the book. But that's only suggested in the 1941 movie. Not even alcohol bottles are shown. Decanters are shown, or glasses. When the police show up at Spade's apartment that first night, the book has him pouring Bacardi rum for himself and the cops. Pages 402 to 403 in my copy. And the scene of Spade with Gutman in Gutman's room included Johnny Walker Scotch by name, page 481. The code would not allow these bottles and labels to be shown or even named. Houston planned every second of the film in minute detail, including sketches of each scene. He used to be an artist, and filmed it all in sequence with the exception of the night and outdoor scenes that were outside. His methodical planning kept the filming on a tight timeline and strict budget, completing it for under $400,000. Arthur Edison was director of photography and used low-key lighting and arresting angles to set the scene, and this darker mode became pretty standard for film noir. 5 points out of 5 for movie production and background. Movie set and scenery, wardrobe. One of the main things I love about these old movies from the 40s and 50s is the clothing styles, the suits, double-breasted suits, vests, fedora hats, ties, the women's longer but yet very feminine dresses. All of it puts to shame what we see out on our streets today, in church, or in the business world. I've seen enough books and photos from that era to know that the movies are portraying the reality of daily life from back then. The apartment decor also looks in line with the times, as it should, because it was filmed then. The Falcon itself was a statue created by American artist Fred Sexton and was based on a real statue, the Kniphausen hawk, from 1697, and Count George Wilhelm Kniphausen, a count in the Holy Roman Empire, who had a drinking vessel in the shape of a hawk that was encrusted with precious jewels and stones. There was one prop that I initially thought was a mistake when I watched the movie. The gun that was used to kill Archer was clearly a revolver, but Spade called it a .45 automatic. I thought that was a rather significant blunder. I knew that Webley revolvers were a British military sidearm in World War I, but I looked up Webley automatic, and behold, there was a modified revolver that had a recoil mechanism added onto it that automatically cocked the hammer and rotated the cylinder, which made for a lighter, more accurate trigger pull. Not many of these pistols were made, but Spade says they carried 8 shots and that it was a .45. Now that was a mistake. There were only 6 shots in the .45 caliber model, but there was also a .38 model that carried 8 rounds. The book on the book, page 400, clarifies it. But the movie shortened the dialogue and got the meaning all confused. So 9 out of 10 for movie set, scenery, and wardrobe. Music. Music was by Adolf Deutsch, and though not really memorable, was appropriate for the setting of the mood in the scenes. 12 out of 15 points. Storyline. Plot. This is, again, a spoiler alert. Spade and Archer played by Jerome Cowan, are a private detective firm in San Francisco in the 1939 to 40 timeframe. A client is shown in by the female assistant Effie Perrin, played by Lee Patrick. The client is a Miss Wonderly, played by Mary Astor, who tells a story of a younger sister being held by a dangerous man named Floyd Thursby. Miles Archer volunteers to find and follow Thursby that night, but he ends up being murdered. The police call and wake up Sam Spade a little after 1 o'clock in the morning to inform him of the murder, and Spade begins the process of tracking down his partner's killer while also seeking to help the client, Miss Wonderly. But that same night, the man Archer was to follow ends up being shot and killed as well. So now the police suspect Spade of revenge killing. Spade realizes things aren't adding up, and so he suspects Wonderly of lying to him. The truth and more danger slowly emerge. Spade is hired by another client, Joel Cairo, who comes into his office, and he's portrayed as effeminate, a flagrant homosexual. In the book, it's even more clear. And Cairo pulls a gun on Spade to try to find the Falcon. Spade realizes that Wonderly, now eventually revealed as Bridget O'Shaughnessy, is working with Cairo, and all trails lead back to a man they call the Fat Man, Caspar Gutman. Get it? Gut Man, and he's huge. Along the way, it is strongly hinted that Spade is a womanizer, having an affair with his deceased partner's wife, Iva, played by Gladys George. He's very touchy-feely with his assistant, Effie, and he seems to spend the night with Bridget. All of this subdued sexuality in the movie is just part of the mix in hard-boiled detective true crime stories and film noir. The book is a bit more direct than the movie, as the code was in place in Hollywood by then, and the code regulated what you could do and say and suggest. Gutman basically recruits Spade's assistants, and Spade gets the Falcon from the dying sea captain, Jacoby. Spade gets Gutman and Cairo to turn on the young thug and Cairo's apparent boyfriend, Wilmer, played by Elisha Cook, and to use him as the fall guy to take the blame for the murders so they can split the profits of the sale of the Falcon and get the police off their backs. But when Effie delivers the Falcon to Spade and the Gutman gang, it turns out to be a fake. The Gutman gang all flee except for Shaughnessy, but Spade gets her to confess to the murder of his partner Miles Archer and calls the police to turn them all in. Spade's closing speech: when a man's partner is killed, he's supposed to do something about it. And so in the end, despite the cynicism of the hard-boiled detective, the philandering, the darkness of the film noir, Sam Spade has a code of honor that he adheres to. He gets justice for his dead partner. So in the darkness, there is still a glimmer of hope and truth. The irony of the film is that it's full of characters who are liars, cheats, con artists, and murderers. But in the end, the Maltese Falcon, the phony, fools everybody, and the bird of prey preys on them. They've given their lives for a useless hunk of junk, the stuff dreams are made of. So for the story, 20 points out of 20. Acting. Bogart won his position in Hollywood as a fan favorite with this breakout blockbuster performance. The tough guy detective defined a character type for the next 80 years as Sam Spade. A womanizer, not very cooperative with the police, Spade is not just after making a buck, he has a core ethic and goes after the truth. Mary Astor plays Miss Wonderly as the femme fatale to the hilt, very deceptive, an expert liar, and a cold-hearted murderer. Yet she seems to fall for Sam Spade. Or does she? And Mary Astor was perfect for the part. She, in real life, had a sordid reputation. Peter Lorre succeeds in playing the slimy homosexual Joel Cairo in a day when homosexuality was not permitted in the movies. And Sidney Greenstreet, in his film acting debut, plays the fat man, Gutman, that play on words, and was nominated for Best Supporting Actor with an Oscar. His greed and polite manners were only matched by his ruthlessness. Director John Huston's father, Walter Huston, makes a cameo performance as the ship's captain, Jacoby, who gets murdered. Effie Perrin Lee Patrick plays the efficient and playful assistant to Spade. The no-nonsense police officers, Tom Polhouse, played by Ward Bond, and Lieutenant Dundee, played by Martin McLean, are as tough and no-nonsense as Spade. Acting, 14 of 15. Special effects. There are no fancy special effects in this movie, but I do want to bring up the lighting and filming techniques that I could have discussed under movie set and scenery. Huston worked out each scene in minute detail, complete with sketches. He had been an artist, and worked closely with photographer Arthur Edison, who worked on Frankenstein and All Quiet on the Western Front, to create a new style of lighting that would become distinctively film noir. Using natural lighting from windows at times, there's an interplay between light and shadow, along with camera angles for a distinct mood and climate in each scene. The camera angles are very noticeable throughout the movie. You get a lot of scenes where the camera's down low, looking up at the actors, particularly with Gutman. Sidney Greenstreet is a huge guy, over 350 pounds. And so when the camera points up and looks at him, the screen is filled with this large human. Along with the fact that it was filmed in black and white, this all creates a very strong visual effect that sets the standards for film noir that would carry on to even more modern day movies. Think about Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. It's in color, yet always seems to take place at night, in the shadows. Edison drew from German Expressionism as an art form that emphasized harsh contrasts, the use of shadows and silhouettes, which perfectly matched the philosophy behind the movie, kind of a pre-existentialist thought. The German Expressionists fled Nazi Germany in the 1930s, coming to the West, and they brought their philosophy of art and movie making to the American scene. The visual effect of all this creates an atmosphere that is dark, moody, and morally ambiguous. So for special effects, 9 out of 10 points. Bonus points for all the above, 5 out of 5 bonus points. My total score, 92. Letter grade, for enjoyability and importance, A+. My analysis and recommendation. Again, Ecclesiastes 1:1, vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That sermon on Sunday morning really spoke to me, having just watched this film, The Maltese Falcon. You see all the lies, the deceit, the double crossing, all with greed at its heart, willing to kill for this Maltese Falcon. And it ends up being just a dingus, a fake, a phony. In the end, that fake bird was what the criminals had given their lives for. In the book, there's a scene that the movie code would not allow in this 1941 movie, and yet it was shown in the 1931 movie. It was crucial for revealing the plot. On page 564, Spade takes O'Shaughnessy into the bathroom in the 31 movie, it's the kitchen, and strip searches her for the missing money. This explicitly states that he does not trust her, even though they've slept together by that time, and it demonstrates how all of her lies and the Falcon would be laid bare, stripped of their deceit. The Falcon itself is shown to be a fraud, and Spade calls it, that's the stuff dreams are made of. The Falcon is a bird of prey, an aggressive predator that kills and eats what it needs, yet men have long used captive trained falcons to hunt for sport. In this movie, the Falcon makes sport of the men hunting it, and one woman. For those whose greed led to murder, they were in the end brought to justice, and Sam Spade's code of honor rose to the occasion. When a man's partner is killed, he's supposed to do something about it. My recommendation, if you have not seen this movie, this is not just a historical piece. And it's valuable for that alone, but this is a great story, well told. And there's a moral lesson buried in there that when it comes out, like Ecclesiastes 1:1, it's shocking. All right, that's it for this review. Tomorrow is National Rum Day, and because Bacardi rum was mentioned in the book, I will review Bacardi rum tomorrow. This is Stab the Dragon and American Catechism out here.